Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to tackle a really big one. Intelligence. What is it really? Where does it come from? And, how does it end up shaping our lives? Okay, so where do we even begin? Well, think about this. How do you measure something you can't actually see? I mean, it's not like height or weight. Intelligence it's abstract. We can't just put a ruler to it. So how in the world have psychologists tried to get a handle on it?
So you might see a definition like this and think, okay, simple enough. It's about solving puzzles and learning as you go. But here's the thing, and it's a big thing. Psychologists all agree that we can only ever judge intelligence indirectly. We have to look at the smart things people do because we can't see the smart itself.
So, here's our game plan. We're going to start with the story of the IQ score. Then, we'll look at ideas that go way beyond just one number. We'll dive into that huge nature versus nurture debate, see how intelligence shifts over a lifetime, and finally, check out what happens at the very high end with giftedness and creativity. All right, first up, let's talk about the thing most people think of when they hear intelligence test, the concept that really started this whole conversation. This whole thing didn't start in some abstract lab. It actually began with a very real problem in French schools back in the early 1900s. A guy named Alfred Binet was asked to figure out which kids needed some extra help. His big idea was this concept of mental age. A little later, William Stern turned that idea into a simple formula. And boom, the intelligence quotient, or IQ, was born. And that test, after getting an update at Stanford, became the famous Stanford-Binet test we still hear about today. And when you look at the scores from a test like this, you get this classic bell-shaped curve. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means most of us, about 2/3 of the population, are clumped right there in the middle with scores between 85 and 115. The average is set smack dab at 100. It really shows you just how uncommon it is to score way out at the high or low ends. But that leads to a huge question, right? Is a single number, a single score, really the whole story? A lot of psychologists started to think, no way, there's got to be more to it. This is where psychologist Howard Gardner came in, and honestly, he kind of blew the whole thing wide open. He said, forget one general intelligence. He argued that we have multiple intelligences. He laid out these 8 different frames of mind, suggesting we all have them just in different amounts. So you could be a genius with people, but not with numbers, or vice versa. And what's so cool is when you put these theories side by side, you've got Robert Sternberg, who breaks it down into 3 types, your classic book smarts, your creative ability to come up with new ideas, and your practical street smarts. Then there's Gardner, who we just mentioned, and of course, Salovey and Mayer, who brought us the incredibly popular idea of emotional intelligence, basically how well you can read and manage your own feelings and the feelings of others. Okay, so whether we're talking about one type of intelligence or a whole bunch of them, it all boils down to one of the biggest, oldest debates in psychology. Is it our genes, or is it our environment, nature or nurture? For the nature side of things, the big evidence often comes from twin studies. Check this out. Researchers found that identical twins who have the exact same DNA have IQ scores that are much more similar than the scores of fraternal twins who are no more genetically alike than any other siblings. That's a pretty strong hint that genes play a big role. But hold on, because the nurture side of the argument is, wow, it's really compelling. Just look at this number. Children who were adopted out of low-income situations into homes with more resources saw their IQ scores jump on average by 12 to 18 points. That is a massive difference, and it's a powerful case for how much our environment can shape us. And if you want to see the power of environment on a massive scale, look no further than something called the Flynn effect. This is wild. For decades, IQ scores have actually been rising all over the world. We're talking about a jump of about 3 points every 10 years. Now, that's happening way too fast to be about genetics. It has to be environmental factors. Things like better nutrition, more education, and just being exposed to more complex ideas in our daily lives. So, we know our environment matters, but what happens to our intelligence as we, get older? Is the way you think as a 20-year-old the same as when you're 70? Well, psychologists split this into 2 main types. Think of it like a computer. First, you have fluid intelligence. That's like your raw processing power. Your ability to think on your feet and solve brand new problems. That tends to peak when we're young adults. But then you have crystallized intelligence. This is more like your hard drive, all the facts, knowledge, and skills you've stored over the years. And the cool part? That can keep on growing for pretty much your entire life. And all that accumulated knowledge, that leads us right to the idea of wisdom. But what is wisdom really? It's not just about knowing a lot of facts. It's about expert knowledge of the messy, practical parts of life. And here's what's so interesting. It's not guaranteed by age. In fact, studies show that personality traits, like simply being open to new experiences, can be a better predictor of wisdom than a high IQ score. All right, for our last section, let's look at the top end of the scale. Here's a question for you. Does being super intelligent automatically make you super creative? Well, it turns out they are not the same thing at all, and it comes down to two totally different ways of thinking. IQ tests are great at measuring what's called convergent thinking. That's when you narrow things down to find the one right answer. But creativity? That's all about divergent thinking, the ability to brainstorm and come up with tons of different unique possibilities. You know, we tend to think of creativity as this lightning bolt of inspiration, right? But it's actually more of a process. It starts with just diving deep into a problem. Then you let it sit for a while, kind of in the back of your mind. Then you might get that famous aha moment. But it doesn't stop there. After that comes the hard work of figuring out if the idea is any good, and then, the really tough part, actually making it happen. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? It's that creativity isn't some magic you're either born with or not. As the famous psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi said, it's something you can actually grow. And it all starts with one simple thing: being curious. So I want to leave you with this final idea. Intelligence isn't just this fixed thing you have. It's something you do. It's something you can explore and play with and expand for your entire life. What's one thing you're curious about today? Thanks for joining us.